It lasted just 14 minutes. 14 minutes that would uncover one of the most troubling patterns of deception in modern FBI history. Congressman Frank Miston had begun with what appeared to be a simple inquiry into FBI operational procedures. Cameras were live, C-SPAN was broadcasting nationwide, and then Cash Patel, seated at the witness table, made a remark that would unravel everything his confirmation had stood upon. This wasn't shaping up to be an ordinary congressional session. It was about to become the moment when the country learned that its FBI director had been caught in a web of deceit stretching to the highest ranks of the Department of Justice. Hart Senate Office Building. Committee Room 206, December 8, 2025. For Congressman Frank Miston, the day had started as a standard oversight hearing, focused on FBI funding, staffing, and performance. The Indiana Democrat had prepared questions on domestic terrorism, cybersecurity, and agent workload. What he hadn't expected was to stumble into what would soon become the defining scandal of Patel's time as director. But 3 days earlier, something had reached Miston's attention that made this hearing far more serious than anyone had imagined. A retired FBI agent from his district had met him at a diner in Gary, Indiana, with a story that sounded almost unbelievable. The agent, a 30-year veteran recently retired from the Bureau, had nervously stirred his coffee as he spoke. "Congressman," he said, "they told us to record everything, every case, every lead, every conversation, and not through normal channels, through unencrypted email." He glanced around the diner before continuing. "In 30 years, I've never seen anything like it. It felt wrong, dangerous." Mr. Vaughn pressed for details, and what he heard chilled him. According to the agent, personnel across multiple field offices had received what seemed like a harmless administrative request, an email asking for weekly summaries of work and accomplishments. But the email had come from an unfamiliar address, and the data it requested included information about classified investigations, active surveillance, and sensitive intelligence collection that should never be shared outside secured systems. "The worst part," the agent said, "is that some people actually replied, mostly younger agents. They thought it was from headquarters." He then handed Miston a printed copy of the email, evidence, he believed, of either a massive breach or an internal operation targeting the Bureau itself. Now, sitting in that Senate hearing room, Miston was about to learn which it was, and whether the man leading the FBI had been honest about it. Patel began his testimony with the standard remarks, statistics on performance, priorities for funding, and commitments to transparency. He spoke confidently, emphasizing accountability, national security, and civil liberties. It was a polished delivery, one of a man sure he controlled the narrative. But that confidence was about to collapse. Mr. Van opened with routine questions about domestic terrorism and staffing. Patel replied smoothly, offering policy explanations that sounded convincing but revealed little. He was calm, composed, occasionally checking his notes, projecting the image of bureaucratic control. Then Mr. Vaughn shifted. "Mr. Patel," he said, his tone sharpening, "are FBI agents currently required to send weekly email reports of their accomplishments and activities?" The room fell silent. For an instant, Patel's composure faltered, a barely visible flicker, but enough for Miston and several reporters to notice. "No," Patel said firmly. "The FBI has never required such reports. Our reporting systems follow established secure protocols." It was a clear denial. And according to the papers in Mr. Vaughn's briefcase, it was a lie. "So," Mr. Vaughn pressed, "you're testifying that no agent has ever been instructed to email weekly summaries of their casework or investigations?" "That's correct," Patel replied, his tone edging toward defensiveness. "We have strict internal systems, but none involve unsecured email." Mr. Van nodded slowly, then reached into his briefcase. "Mr. Patel, let me read something to you. Tell me if this sounds familiar." He opened a folder and read aloud. "All field personnel are requested to provide weekly summaries of current activities, ongoing investigations, and operational accomplishments. Please submit these reports via email to the address below." Color drained from Patel's face. Reporters began typing furiously. The script had been shattered. Mr. Patel, Mr. Vaughn continued, this email was distributed to agents in multiple field offices. Are you saying you're unaware of it? Patel hesitated, his mouth moving but no words coming out. The only sound was the clicking of cameras and keyboards. Finally, he spoke, his voice unsteady. Congressman, if such an email was sent, it wasn't authorized by FBI leadership. We would never compromise operational security that way. But Vaughn pressed harder. So the email exists, but you didn't authorize it. Who did? I'd need to investigate that and report back, Patel said weakly. This email was sent across government systems and reached the FBI. Are you telling this committee that as FBI Director, you weren't informed when your agents received unauthorized requests for classified information? Patel tried to recover. That email, if it existed, was distributed across government agencies. So it was sent to the FBI, Vaughn cut in. A moment ago you said it wasn't. Which is it? The trap was sprung. Patel had contradicted his own testimony in under 3 minutes. Either he had lied about the email's existence, or was lying now about its origin. There was no middle ground. It was sent to the FBI, Patel finally admitted quietly. As director, I said we wouldn't respond. It came from a general department account. The admission hit like a shockwave. Patel had confirmed the email existed and that it had originated inside the Department of Justice. The implications were staggering. Someone within DOJ had been secretly soliciting classified data from FBI agents, and the director had tried to hide it. But Mr. Vaughn wasn't done. He had prepared for this moment. Let's move to domestic terrorism operations, he said. According to my information, the internal tagging system used to track such cases was discontinued, and staff was reduced. Can you explain that? Patel looked trapped. Sir, I'll have to provide that in writing. I'm not familiar with that issue. Another damaging moment. The director of the FBI was claiming ignorance about one of his own agency's programs. It left only 2 possibilities, either incompetence or dishonesty. Mr. Vaughn turned back to the email. In your written testimony, you discussed cybersecurity. So, let's connect that. Are FBI agents still required to send end-of-week emails listing their completed tasks? It was Patel's final chance to come clean. Instead, he doubled down. I appreciate the question, sir. But no, that was never done. Agents were never asked to report their weekly goals or accomplishments. Another lie, and Mr. Vaughn was ready. The reason I ask, the congressman said, is because I spoke personally with an agent at a retirement event who described chasing a suspect on I-94, someone who'd stabbed a relative and crossed state lines. The next day, he was told to file an email report detailing what he'd accomplished that week. The detail was devastating. This wasn't speculation. It was direct testimony from an agent about the very policy Patel had denied. The contradiction was clear, and Patel knew it. Cornered, he began repeating his earlier excuse. That email was distributed across agencies, so yes, it reached the FBI. So it was sent to the FBI? Vaughn interrupted again. It was, Patel admitted. We did not respond. It came from a general DOJ account. The pattern was unmistakable now. Deny, get caught, admit partially, shift blame. Patel's credibility was collapsing in real time, and everyone in that room knew it. It was a masterclass in bureaucratic dishonesty, unraveling live on national television. Congressman Frank Miston pressed his advantage. My next question, he said evenly, concerns the information my FBI agent sent in response to that email. How was that information protected? Patel looked momentarily confused. I'm sorry, are you saying the agent responded to that email? Or that they didn't? I told the workforce not to, Patel said finally. That short statement was another crucial admission. Patel had just confirmed that he knew about the email and had instructed agents not to respond, contradicting his earlier denial of any knowledge. But you just admitted that they received it, Miston continued. We did, Patel replied. But let's assume for the sake of argument that someone did respond. That information would have only been sent to their immediate supervisor. Each supervisor was told that if they received any such data, it was not to be acted upon. The answer revealed the depth of the security failure. Classified intelligence had been transmitted through unsecured email channels, and the director's only response was to tell staff to ignore it. The cybersecurity implications were staggering. So what happened to that information once supervisors received it? Miravan asked. I don't know, Patel admitted. I'll have to get back to you on that, if any data was collected. But if it was, I don't know. 3 words, I don't know, summed up the entire disaster. The FBI director did not know what had happened to improperly transmitted classified information within his own agency. He didn't know who had sent the request, how many agents had responded, or where the information had gone. And he had spent the first half of the hearing denying it had ever happened. Mr. Van continued, carefully dismantling Patel's credibility. So you've said that the email came from another agency. Which agency was that? It came from the Department of Justice, Patel replied. And those responses, those emails, never went back to DOJ officials who requested them? No, sir. And you're 100% confident of that? Yes, sir, Patel said, though even he seemed to realize how hollow the assurance sounded. How could he be certain when he had just admitted not knowing what had happened to the data? The congressman moved in for the final strike. The information those supervisors received, where did it go? That information should not have been transmitted anywhere, Patel said carefully. We intervened quickly enough to stop any further movement of it. Because you believed it was wrong? Yes, Patel answered hesitantly. Then why did you prevent it? Because our operational mandates prohibit public disclosure of that kind of information through external channels, Patel explained. It was the most revealing moment of the entire exchange. Patel had blocked the transmission because he knew the DOJ request was inappropriate and dangerous. He had understood that from the start, yet he had spent the hearing minimizing and denying his knowledge. So, to be perfectly clear, Ms. Van concluded, the Department of Justice was wrong. Patel tried one final deflection. I'm not speaking for the Department of Justice. You're saying that directive was inconsistent with FBI procedure? My procedures operate under DOJ oversight, Patel said weakly. I'm saying as a subordinate agency, that's where the email originated. Beyond that, I don't know. It was a dismal conclusion to a devastating examination. The FBI director had been caught lying, had admitted to a serious security breach, and had exposed either incompetence or disregard for his agency's own protocols. As Miravan's questioning ended, the weight of what had happened began to settle over the hearing room. This wasn't about one unauthorized email. It was about a pattern of deception from the nation's top law enforcement officer. It raised the possibility that the Justice Department itself had been conducting unauthorized intelligence collection on the FBI. And it showed that Patel had chosen to mislead Congress rather than tell the truth. The room erupted after the questioning ended. Reporters rushed to file stories detailing Patel's contradictions. Republican members discussed how to contain the fallout, while Democrats began drafting plans for a deeper investigation. Within the Justice Department, officials were already calculating how much more of the truth might soon surface. But the real damage was already done. In just 14 minutes, a relatively unknown congressman from Indiana had dismantled the credibility of one of America's most powerful law enforcement officials. He had demonstrated that Patel had lied under oath, that he either lacked competence or integrity, and that there were grave concerns about unauthorized intelligence gathering within the government itself. The story dominated the headlines. Legal scholars debated whether Patel's false statements amounted to perjury. Ethics committees began reviewing whether he had violated his oath of office, and ordinary Americans were left to wonder if the FBI director would lie about something this fundamental. What else was he hiding? In the days that followed, new evidence began to surface. Whistleblowers stepped forward with more examples of improper intelligence requests. Investigators learned that the same email had been sent not just to FBI offices, but to other agencies as well. Slowly, a clearer picture emerged of a systematic effort to collect information on federal law enforcement through unofficial channels. But all that came later. In that moment, inside that committee room, only one fact mattered. Through steady, disciplined questioning, Frank Miston had exposed the truth. The FBI director had lied to Congress, and no amount of bureaucratic language could obscure that fact. The American people deserved better, an FBI director who told the truth, leaders who safeguarded classified material instead of politicizing it, and officials who put duty above self-interest. Yet the story was far from over. What the public didn't see were the next 48 hours, when a behind-the-scenes struggle began that would shape the future of federal transparency. Within hours of the hearing, Patel's phone was flooded with calls from Justice Department officials and congressional leaders. The central question, how much more was Congressman Miston prepared to reveal? The answer came the next evening. Mirvan's office released a statement announcing that he possessed additional evidence, emails between DOJ and FBI officials never disclosed to oversight committees. He also confirmed that several current and former agents were ready to testify about what they described as a systemic pattern of unauthorized intelligence collection. Meanwhile, Patel was scrambling to contain the fallout. Late that night, he gathered his senior staff at FBI headquarters to discuss potential leaks and media strategy. But the next morning brought even worse news. The Washington Post reported that the same DOJ email had gone to agents at the DEA, ATF, and U.S. Marshals Service. Even more alarming, some had replied, sending operational data about investigations involving corruption, terrorism, and organized crime. Patel's public denial came swiftly. He blamed disgruntled former employees, insisting no improper data exchange had occurred. But his response backfired when two current FBI supervisors publicly contradicted him. 72 hours after the hearing, Congressman Miston held a press conference that changed everything. The American people deserve to know that our law enforcement agencies serve justice, not politics, he declared. He released documents showing internal DOJ emails discussing intelligence gathering initiatives targeting law enforcement personnel. The most damaging evidence revealed that Patel had been briefed on the operation weeks before his testimony, proving his claims of ignorance false. The fallout was immediate. Within a day, 17 Democratic senators demanded Patel's resignation. 3 Republican senators called for a full investigation. The Senate Judiciary Committee scheduled emergency hearings, this time with subpoena power and criminal referral authority. Even within the FBI, patience ran out. In a joint statement, the FBI Agents Association and other law enforcement groups called for transparency and expressed no confidence in Patel's leadership. As the pressure mounted, Patel became increasingly isolated. Justice Department officials began contradicting his version of events, and the Inspector General announced a formal inquiry into the email operation. Cash Patel had failed every test in just 14 minutes. But those 14 minutes triggered a chain reaction that would expose a scandal larger than anyone had imagined. The only question that remained was whether he would face real accountability or simply move on to the next hearing, the next denial, and the next cover-up in a career defined by evasion and political calculation. The answer, as America would soon learn, was coming sooner than anyone expected.